Another day is here, and you're ready for it. What to wear? Check. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Check. Planning for what's next and how to save for it? That's where Bank of America can help. For your financial to-dos, Bank of America has experts ready to help get you closer to your goals. Get started at one of our local financial centers or 24/7 in our mobile banking app. Find a location near you at bankofamerica.com/talktous. What would you like the power to do? Mobile banking requires downloading the app and is only available for select devices. Message and data rates may apply. Bank of America N.A., member FDIC.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hello and welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, and joining me to carry on with our journey through Euro 2024 is Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
I am very well, thank you. Quite enjoying this journey through match day 2.
Yeah, I mean, thus far it's been interesting. I think we had some good games on. Varied is actually a good word. Varied is a good word, and varied describes yesterday quite well. So we began with Slovenia 1, Serbia 1. The Slovenians went ahead through Karničić on 69 minutes and looked like they were going to get a big win, but then Luka Jovic equalised on 95 minutes to salvage a point for Serbia. And I thought it was a point they wanted based on the balance of the game, but I was kind of hoping the Slovenians would hold out, because it would have been great to see All Black, who's by far the best player in the team, just, securing a spot in the knockouts.
Yeah, I agree. And actually played really, really well yesterday. Made 2-3 really good interventions, blocks, a one-on-one save, and one really good sort of reaction save as well, I suppose. I thought he had a very, very good game overall. We've spoken a lot about him and Šeško being the two main ones for Serbia, but I think Šeško's been a little disappointing. Part of that is perhaps the service, obviously, he gets, and the bigger part of it, in my opinion, is the person who plays up front alongside with, because Sporar is not the one, let's say, but they have the players they have, and obviously they've dealt with them fairly well, and like you say, it would have been really good to see them get a first win at the Euros ever.
Yeah, I don't think Sporar in any way helps Šeško. Like, when you play a front two, it's really about the partnership. Like, regardless of whether these are the two best players that they have available, there's just no argument to be made that Sporar is the best partner for Šeško, and clearly Šeško is the better player of the two. And you just wonder, is there somebody else in that squad that would make more sense as a partner for Šeško, that would amplify Šeško and themselves?
I mean, we'd probably have to not acknowledge, but give him his dues that he does work pretty hard, and he's obviously a bit of a unit in terms of height, not width. And so his attempt to hold up play is obviously something that Slovenia make use of sometimes. But it does just feel like he used to be the first choice striker because there wasn't anybody else, and so he's just still in the team. I'm not familiar with a couple of the other forwards they've got, like Jan Mlakar, who's at Pisa, but Jan Šelar at Lugano got quite a lot of good reviews earlier this season. He hasn't scored at international level yet, so I don't know if he's just finding his feet basically in the game and becoming a bit more of a thing. But even if not, I would have thought that after Sporar has done his main role of being the batter and ram and working hard and doing a bit of Šeško's running at times and that kind of thing, with 10 or 15 maybe to go, you've got someone like Josip Ilicic, for example, on the bench. I'm sure there's a bit of technical ability left in the boots, even if he's not at physical peak these days, if he's or someone similar to him in the squad, even pushing Timmy Elsnick a bit further forward as an actual number 10. I thought he was quite good yesterday. Maybe someone like that, a little bit more creative, a little bit more capable of playing little through balls and 1-2s and so on would benefit Šeško and therefore would benefit Slovenia a bit more.
Yeah, I don't really understand what the situation is with Ilicic. Like, we haven't seen him play yet through 2 games. And maybe it's a thing where, if they're behind with 10 to 15 minutes left in the game, they're going to bring him on to try and rescue something. But, Janza scores on 77 in the first game to give them a point, and they were probably very happy with that point. And then obviously they were leading this game, so they were trying to hold on for the win. But I really want to see Ilicic play in this tournament, and I hope he does get some minutes between, in what may be their only game left when they take on England. Speaking of England, Denmark won, England won. Harry Kane puts England 1 up on 18 minutes. Christiansen switches off. Kyle Walker bursts onto the ball. It's an absolutely horrible cross, which takes 2 big deflections and lands at Harry Kane's feet, and he makes no mistake from 7 yards out. And from there, Karl, England were not the better team on the pitch. The Danes,
I'm not sure England were a team.
I thought. Well, that's a very fair point, but I thought for the remainder of the first half, Denmark quite comprehensively outplayed England, who just seemed to retreat into some sort of weird League Two playing a Premier League team in the FA Cup kind of mindset. And Morten Yeoman, I'm told is the actual pronunciation. He hits an absolute rasper from 25 yards out that goes in off the bottom of the post. I thought he was the best midfielder on the pitch. Now, as we could have expected, a lot of criticism has fallen Trent's way. But Declan Rice was absolutely shocking yesterday. Jude Bellingham was dreadful. Phil Foden was dreadful again. Saka was poor. Kane got a goal, didn't do a whole lot else, and gave the ball away, leading to the Danish goal. Like, this England team is not working, Karl. And we're through 2 games now, and they're very fortunate to have 4 points.
Yeah,
and both goals that they've scored have been the result of awful crosses that took big deflections. So it's not even like a thing where they've actually crafted a goal. They've gotten lucky with both goals.
Yeah, England didn't play well at all yesterday. I mean, like you mentioned after the goal, minutes 1 through 20, England had 3 shots to Denmark's 1, and England had 58% possession. Minutes 20 through till half-time, England had 3 shots again, Denmark had 8, and Denmark had 62% possession. Like, it was such a wild swing as soon as the goal went in. It was weird. Now, I'm not saying it's a mitigating factor, but it was very, very noticeable how bad that pitch was, first of all. And England's, shall we say, absolutely pointless, directionless passing, which we've seen in the early stages of both matches, took a hit because of that. Like, where they just have the ball, giving it to Trent, who's 3 yards away from Rice, giving it to Gehi, who's 4 yards away, giving it to Trippier, who's nowhere really helpful at all. That happened a lot in the first couple of games for England's so-called possession. And they couldn't do that because the pitch was so bad. So I do think that had an impact, although having an impact on achieving nothing is not really, it's not an excuse or a reason. It's just, I think it did impact on their attempts to control the game, such as it is. The midfield was horrible, no question. There was no real movement off the ball. There was no real technical quality that we saw. I think maybe Trent had 2 occasions, 1 decent ball down the channel and then 1 driving run when he realised he was about to be subbed in the second half. Rice was very, very poor defensively as well as on the ball. And actually, I thought Bellingham might actually have been the worst of the three, to be honest. Like a couple of moments where you see the quality or whatever, but basically there were a lot of blind alleys from Bellingham yesterday. A lot of really poor first touches and turned back into danger. England as a whole were just rubbish, really. That setup definitely didn't work or isn't working. I think if you're wedded to the idea of starting the three, then you've got to turn it around, put Rice in his Arsenal position and put Trent deepest as Jorginho, basically. And you know he's not going to be excellent defensively, but you want him on the ball and being the only one in that space on the ball, most importantly, because there's way, way, way too much completely irrelevant giving and getting and giving it off again and going nowhere with it and not moving the opposition team around.
Yeah, I mean, I do fully agree on the issue of the pitch. It was pretty disgraceful, to be fair. Now, the thing is, it's the same pitch for both teams. And to their credit, the Danes seem to be able to ping the ball about fairly well. But certainly it did affect England. And you could see as well, it was affecting the England players more than the Danes in terms of being able to carry the ball and having confidence in what was underfoot. But to me, it's the mindset. Like, score and then immediately retreat into the shell. And how many times did we see Jude Bellingham 25 yards from his own goal trying to pick the ball up? We even saw Harry Kane dropping really deep, looking for the ball, because it just wasn't getting there. Rice in possession was absolutely shocking. And this is like, there's major flaws in Declan Rice's game on and off the ball, which is why he'll never be a great six. He's a very good box-to-box player, and I think if you put him in a box-to-box role on a pitch like that, he'll actually thrive, because he is just a rugged type of player, and he can just cover ground and press people and harry them and bother them when they have the ball. And he's obviously a very good athlete, but he has no confidence on the turn, and it was almost funny watching the Danish players, like, not even fully press him, like half press him, knowing he's just going to give the ball straight back to where it's come from. So he'd get it off Pickford, not turn, he'd just know there was someone coming behind him, and he'd lay it off to Guehi, and he'd lay it off to Stones. And the issue is he's not relocating into a decent enough position then, where he can take the ball up even on a half turn and see a bit of the pitch and be able to get a ball going forward. And then I don't understand the logic in, you're struggling to progress the ball, you're struggling to control the midfield. Oh, let's bring on Conor Gallagher, who is not going to offer you any control, who's not particularly good on the ball. Like, he's fine. He's a good player, but he's not a hub that you can play through. And you've got Adam Wharton and Kobbie Mainoo sitting on the bench, both of whom are hubs that you can play through. And, like, for me, it's just such an obvious thing to bring Wharton on, let him play that role where he sits in front of the defence and he can dictate play. And he can do that Jorginho type of role that, he can be the one that's your starting point. He's got an outstanding range of passing. He gets rid of the ball quickly, gets it moving. Everything is pre-planned. Like, he's not the type that's getting the ball, having a big turning circle and then having to look and see where the options are. He's receiving the ball on the turn and he knows where he's putting it next. He's already made that decision before the ball comes to him. And then just get Trent to right back. Get him in a position where we know he's great. I've said this to Guy before you came on the call. It doesn't speak well of Southgate that his excuse after the game is, we don't have a natural replacement for Calvin Phillips. Calvin Phillips hasn't been an England regular in the better part of 2 years. So it's bullshit to say that Calvin Phillips is the reason that you're struggling in midfield. And it doesn't speak well that we're in a major tournament. And how many times have we seen this Trent-Rice pairing now? Is this the 4th time in total? Because that's not good either. Like, you should have had your midfield settled a year ago. You have no injuries. Calvin Phillips is not there by choice because he's not playing well at club level. So you should have had your midfield sorted a year ago.
Yeah, it is all very off the cuff a little bit in terms of the build-up play, and that is because there isn't an established midfield. And that was the very, very simple reason why Denmark were the better team yesterday, because they had a style of play, they had progression through midfield, and they had an idea of how to use the midfield. It was pretty much as simple as that. I think it was very noticeable that when Gallagher was brought on, what England needed was Rice, but club level Rice rather than what Rice is doing with England. Like, the idea of bringing on Gallagher and what you want him to do is what Rice has been doing to a much, much better level. Simple as that, really.
Yeah. Yeah, so like that, again, like, why not just bring on Adam Morton? Let Rice do that box-to-box role. It just didn't make any sense at all. And, like, the other thing as well is, look, Ollie Watkins had a great season, so I'm happy to see him get games. But I don't really understand how you're bringing on 2 wide players and neither of them are Anthony Gordon. Like, Eze is a brilliant player, and I would have brought him on probably for Bellingham, who I just thought was, like, as you said earlier, maybe the worst of the 3 midfielders. And it was a very low bar. But I just don't understand how you're not getting Anthony Gordon on there and trying to run him in behind Joachim Andersen, who's a very good centre-back, but does struggle a little bit for pace. And, like, the covering defender from there is going to be Vestergaard, who's A, very, very slow, and B, already on a yellow. And he played on a yellow card for, 75 minutes or so?
Yeah, very rare.
And England didn't really know. Like, just so naive and so passive. And then he comes out as well. The other excuse is he starts blaming the players and saying they're not used to being favourites. You got to a World Cup semi-final. You got to a European final. You got to a World Cup quarter-final. You've got players that play for Man City, for Liverpool, for Arsenal. Like John Stones, Kyle Walker, Kieran Trippier, Phil Foden, and Jude Bellingham have all won the Champions League. And yet, these are players that aren't used to playing as favourites. Where's the logic there?
Yeah, it is a decidedly muddled team at the minute. And to be honest, even even formation-wise, there's not a whole bunch of those players you've just mentioned or the rest of them in the squad who play with a double pivot in midfield anymore. I don't think that should be the biggest issue, don't get me wrong. I think England should look pretty solid with a double pivot midfield because of the players that they've got ahead of them. But at the minute, nothing is working. Nothing is in unison at the minute.
Well, you say that, but like City play a double pivot.
City play their own style of a double pivot.
Just
nothing sort of like anybody else.
Say that to me one more time.
So City play their own very different style. Nobody's going to try and replicate that, whether the double pivot midfield or any other part of it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But there's still plenty of these players that play in a double pivot. Like, even at Arsenal, when Rice gets moved to that box-to-box role, it's still Jorginho or Partey and Rice in a double pivot with Martin Odegaard playing well advanced of them. Like, these players can and have the experience of doing this. It's just that the mindset is all wrong. And I had hoped after the World Cup we would have we would have seen this England team grow and learn that they need to be more front-footed. They need to be more aggressive. They need to go and take control of games and then start to put a squeeze on teams. And yet they're retreating back into a shell, and that has to be from the manager. That's his mindset. And I have to say, Karl, as I was coming out of this last night, all I could think of was, how on earth was he Manchester United's first choice to be their new manager? Because he is not a good manager. Not a good manager at all. And, I don't know what club would hire him.
Well, obviously we don't know their review process of what their big findings were at the end of it, but given that their decision is to keep Ten Hag in place, I can completely believe that they might have hired Gareth Southgate.
Well, don't forget now, they decided that they already had the best manager in charge. That's according to Eric Ten Hag. Last question on this game before we move on to the late game. What did you think of Yeoman last night? Because I thought he was probably the best player on the pitch for the first... Up until he went off. To be fair, I thought he was the best player on the pitch up until he went off. He scored a great goal. I thought he dominated the midfield areas. Would you take him at Liverpool as...
I would take him at Liverpool, yes. Probably only in the event that, let's say, like a Gravenberch or somebody else was moving on. That improves the squad quite quickly. That gives a bit more, should we say, forceful options through the centre. And again, it's going to depend very much on what's the set up in terms of somebody else defensive mid coming in. I don't think we can just have a Hjulmand and that's it sort of thing. I would like maybe his kind of style and then still a pure 6 or defensive midfielder. But yes, quality-wise, I'd definitely take him. I thought he was very, very good. I thought either him or Højbjerg were my top midfielders or top players, actually, of the game. I thought Højbjerg was miles better than he has been, both at Spurs and in Denmark's first game as well. Yeah, that's just like I say, both of them were super aggressive. Both of them got forward plenty. The goal was obviously not a hit and hope, but somewhat opportunistic or optimistic, whichever one you prefer. But in general, more energy, more determination, more positional adherence to the overall team plan. Just worked very, very well, basically. They showed what a midfield partnership should be.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And I think if you're a Spurs fan, you're probably wondering where this version of Højbjerg has been, because that's not the guy you get to see on a weekly basis. Final game then, Karl. Spain confirming their spot in the knockout phase, a 1-0 win over the Italians. Riccardo Calafiori own goal. He was very unfortunate with that own goal because I thought he was Italy's best player again. Spain were the better team and I thought fully deserved their win. I thought the Italians were just very, very passive and quite disappointing.
Spain were miles better. I think you've underplayed that quite a bit. That should have been like a 4-0 win for Spain. That would have been an accurate reflection of the 90 minutes for me. Should have been 1-0 at the very least, if not 2-0 in the opening 5 minutes. There were two really, really, really big headed chances. Williams hitting the woodwork, Yamal hit the woodwork. Morata had a good chance to either shoot properly or tee up somebody else. If Pedri missed a really good chance as well. Like, this should have been a bit of a thumping, to be perfectly honest. 3-0 definitely wouldn't have flattered Spain whatsoever. 4-0 would have, I think, even been a reasonable representation of how the game unfolded.
Yeah, Spain are looking a lot better, I think, than people expected them to pre-tournament. Now, I would still have some questions over that defensive line. I do quite like Lenormand, but I don't know that he's this level, but he's playing very well. And obviously Marc Cucurella at left back is another question mark. The midfield is functioning brilliantly, though. Pedri, Rodri and Fabian Ruiz, they just look so comfortable playing together. And then that attack, Yamal and Williams, I thought Williams was a lot better in this game than he was in the first game.
Definitely. To be honest, I thought Cucurella was really good as well last night. I thought he was one of Spain's better players. Like first half, he locked down defensively, gave Chiesa nothing. They made subs at half-time, changed people around. I thought he was really, really good, to be honest. Obviously, doesn't have to, and neither did Dani Carvajal last night, go forward and sort of overcommit too much. Maybe that helped to simplify the game and just give them a sort of half role, if you like. But them not going forward was a big part of the game plan because Yamal and Williams were so wide, so stretched all the time, and that's what got them 1v1 a lot of the time. And worked really well for Spain. The reverse to what teams usually do. Let those players come inside and let the fullbacks bomb on down the side, but as I say, it worked really well.
Yeah, I suppose with Cucurella, the thing is, we're judging him off 2 seasons at Chelsea, where it hasn't been great. But this looks much more like the player that earned the move to Chelsea, that almost went to City, that was so impressive with Brighton. And it has been forgotten just how good he was with Brighton, to the point where 2 of the biggest clubs in Europe are throwing 60, 65 million at Brighton for a player that Brighton, I think, had paid 16 million for a year earlier. And his reputation has taken a walloping since going to Chelsea. That's why I say he's the one you might have questions over. But it's not that we haven't seen him be a very, very good left back. It's just that for whatever reason, it hasn't really worked for him at Chelsea. But I think that's more of a damnation of Chelsea than it is of Marc Cucurella, who's clearly a very good footballer.
Yeah, look, I think a big part of this is we have to remember the reason he came to English football in the first place with like a good reputation, and he was very highly thought of in Spain. And the reason we'd been sort of mentioning him as a potential player for us to look at, he played left mid in a 4-4-2 at Getafe most of the time. Like left back sometimes, but 4-4-2, left midfield, really aggressive, winning the ball back high upfield and loads of crosses. Brighton then used him as a wing back. Brighton then decided to further take that on and develop and use him sometimes as a left back and sometimes as left of a 3. And then Chelsea started doing that more often. Those have never been his roles. He got moved back more and more, and you can understand why, because teams like to get more comfortable players on the ball who have, final third ability in ever more defensive roles so that they can contribute all over the pitch. But that's not his role. And Chelsea as a whole, as you say, were a massive car crash anyway for a large part of the season. So really, really difficult. He became obviously a bit of a scapegoat there as well for supporters. But now he's had a real good run. He's had a strong end to the season and he's stayed in the Spanish team. He's probably played more games in a row now over the last, 2 months, 3 months than he had done for, let's say, most of the year before that. Makes a big difference.
It does make a big difference. And he's clearly a confidence player as well. Like a lot of players are. They just need to find rhythm and then they can kick on and advance their careers. He has played 5 games now this calendar year for Spain, and he had played once for Spain before that. So he's really established himself this year. The other issue with Chelsea is, he played 24 games the first year and 21 the second year, because there's been rotation there with Ben Chilwell. So he hasn't even had the kind of safety of knowing, no matter what, your first choice here. Because when Chilwell is fit, Chilwell has played instead of him. And that's probably hit his confidence. So, as you said, he played left of a 4-4-2 for Getafe. He played, I think, as a wing-back for Eibar the season before he went to Getafe. And at Brighton, he played as a wing-back at the start of the year. Then, obviously, Potter started messing about and doing silly things. But, yeah, I like him as a player. And he is someone that I did think maybe as a Robbo replacement would have made sense for us. He's still only 25. That's the other thing people forget, is that he went to Chelsea as a 23-year-old who'd had 1 year outside of his homeland. So it was an upheaval and a big step up, because Eibar are a very small club, Getafe are a small club by Spanish standards, and Brighton are a small club by Premier League standards. And then all of a sudden you're thrust into this massive spotlight. And I know he'd been at Barcelona, he'd come through their academy, but he'd never had a run in the Barcelona team. So he wasn't used to that kind of pressure and expectation and, you know, the microscope of a big club. And I think that's probably affected him too.
And just to highlight, he is in the team ahead of Alex Grimaldo. We know what kind of a season he had, so there's obviously a lot of faith in him right now, which again is going to help build the confidence.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Grimaldo might have been the best left back in the world the past 12 months. Now, wing back, admittedly, and is probably a little bit too small and lightweight. I know Cucurella is not a monster. He's only 5'8", 5'9" himself, but he's stocky and he's strong. Grimaldo as a left back in a 4 might not work quite as well as he does as a wing back, but he had a sensational year. So yeah, this should do his confidence the world of good. Right, that is our games from yesterday. Let's quickly just rattle through today's games. We've gone way over the time we would normally allow, but today's games don't really warrant too much chat. Slovakia versus Ukraine, Karl. Ukraine heavily beaten in their first game, and the Slovakian team pulled off quite the impressive upset, beating Belgium. Yeah,
pretty simple, this one, isn't it? First of all, Ukraine have to improve a lot. Otherwise, they're out. It's going to be that simple, isn't it? I think they started okay against Romania, so I don't know if it was that they didn't expect Romania to be as good as they were, or they just sort of mentally collapsed as a team after that first goal went in, but they were well beaten in the end, and they need individuals to step up a lot, and certainly the team overall performance needs to be far better. For Slovakia, bit difficult to know what to expect from them, I suppose, because obviously a very good win over Belgium, but they put a lot into it as well, and they got little bits of fortune, so all of that can either release the pressure and sort of they play well, or it can sort of remove a bit of that absolute necessity, because this probably would have been one of the games that they targeted to get points from rather than the Belgium one. But now they have a real good chance to maybe even go on and win the group. So get a result here and you're in a fantastic position.
Yeah, I mean, get a result here, win this game and play for a draw against Romania, and you will top this group with 7 points. Let's do a prediction now. I'm going to pick Slovakia to win. I was so put off by Ukraine in the first game. I'm going to go 2-1 Slovakia.
I'll go for Ukraine to really push on and try to do far more than they did. I'll go for a bit of a reaction from them and say 2-2.
Okay. Poland versus Austria. Both of these teams lost their first game, but both of them will have felt a little bit unlucky to lose their first game. They gave the Netherlands and France, respectively, good games. I think Austria are probably the favourites here. I just think overall their squad is a little bit deeper, a little bit more balanced than the Poles. I do worry about their ability to score goals. There's not really many goals in the squad, but if Lewandowski's not fully fit, then there's not many goals in the Poles squad either.
Yeah, I think here my decision basically rests on the tactical setup of the teams, and we know Austria's not just high on confidence because they've been getting results, but they're really fully behind this setup that they have, and the players have all really bought into it, and they know their roles and they know their jobs. And let's be honest, they gave France a really good game, and had they taken a point from that game, I think everyone would have said it was really well deserved. So the fact that they lost isn't really the same way as Poland lost. This is, however, a must-win game for both of them if they want to go through, because then they each play the other difficult team in the group, Netherlands and France. So I expect Austria to win this on technical and tactical levels, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that midfield area for Austria is just really strong. And you've got 5 players that can all interchange and move into different roles. I mean, Sabitzer and Lehmer playing as the kind of wide midfielders, but both of them Obviously very comfortable in central areas, very comfortable on the ball, very hard working along with Baumgartner and Seevold and Grilic. It's great to see him playing because of the injury issues that he had. So it's a really strong midfield group, and that's where I think they'll win this game. So I'll go 1-0 Austria.
I was going to say the same. So to be different, I'll say 2-1. Let's say Poland give themselves something to go for.
And you're right. Like if this game ends in a draw, both of these teams are out. So there's just no real logic in playing for the draw. Both of these sides need to commit to going for the win. Finally, then, the Netherlands versus France. Wasn't overly impressed with either side in their opening game,
Karl. I thought Netherlands played really well in that first half. They were very, very vibrant and creative and bright going forward, and they looked to get Gakpo one-on-one as often as they could. I think they should have probably scored 2 or 3 goals against Poland in that first half, to be fair. The setup thereafter wasn't great. They didn't have a huge amount of control of the ball, and as we spoke about before, I didn't think the starting central midfielders had a particularly good game either. So definitely improvements to be made from that regard. But I thought, considering what they went into the tournament with in terms of those injuries and late withdrawals and all the rest of it, it wasn't bad, to be fair.
No, it wasn't bad, but as you said, they should have scored 2 or 3 goals in that first half, and the one goal they did score took an enormous deflection. So it was just, and it was a shot from distance. It just felt like, to me, they weren't getting good, high-level chances in and around the box. Like, they were playing really well up until about 20 yards from goal. And then I felt like it got a little bit stuck in the mud at times. And yeah, I thought Cody had a good game. Obviously, some of the defenders played quite well, but it was that kind of central midfield area where it just seemed to let them down, that final ball. And to be fair, it was against Poland. And there was a Polish team missing some of their best players. So that's kind of where I sit with. They played some nice football, but I didn't really think much of it. The French, on the other hand, huffed and puffed an awful lot against the Austrians, and one moment of magic from Kylian Mbappe creates an opening. But this goal is a fluke. It's a cross that hits an Austrian defender and it deflects in. I don't know about you, Karl, but I'm watching Ousmane Dembele and I'm wondering what on earth has happened to that lad. His confidence just seems completely shot, and has done all season. I watched a fair bit of PSG this past year, and I was so disappointed with him all season long.
I would be having Bradley Barcola ahead of him for club and country right now, let's put it that way. I get that he offers particular things that probably Deschamps wants, and we know Deschamps, amongst other coaches, is very, very much stick with the players that you know. That's why there's still a central midfield of Kante and Rabiot. But more is required from Dembele. I think he was one of the biggest underperformers in that first game for them. Not the only one, but certainly one of the principal ones, given that he's supposed to be one of the key providers of chances and game-splitting movements and runs and all the rest of it. So they definitely need him back to something good. Otherwise, they have loads and loads of options there on the bench. I would prefer to see him use that squad a little bit better. But, without Mbappe, assuming he doesn't start the game at the very least, maybe we see an alternative version of France in one or two ways.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens with Mbappe. Obviously broke his nose quite badly in the first game. Is going to be fit to play, but will they risk him from the start, or will they hold him back off the bench, knowing that they've got Poland in the final game? So there's a very, very high chance of progression through to the knockout phases. And I think France will be the type of team that'll look at it and say, look, we don't really care who we're going to play in the knockouts. Once we're in the knockouts, we're confident we can beat any of these teams. And we believe we've got the best player at the tournament. So it'll be interesting to see. Prediction then?
2-1 France.
2-1 France. I'm going to go for the draw. I'll go 2-2. I think it'll be a decent enough game. I want to see more from Xavi Simons, though. I want to see him on the ball more. Without a strong midfield behind him, I think what the Dutch need to do is just use that midfield to funnel the ball forward and just graft off it. Like, not try and take too much out of the ball. Get it, feed it through to either Simons or Cody Gakpo, and then build from there. I want to see more from Xavi Simons.
In general, I would agree with that, but Veerman's passing in the first game on short, simple, just give it balls was atrocious. So
I wouldn't be starting him.
Yeah.
No, he had his chance, and I'm sorry, but that would be a hard pass on me for me on him now for the next game. Yeah. Right, so that is our Friday slate. Should be good. Like, should be a decent enough day of football. Nice to have the 3 games. Unfortunately, Saturday is the final day of 3 games, which is disappointing. It's the final day of the 2 p.m. kickoff, which I've been very much enjoying. So yeah, I mean, it should be a decent day.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Like you say, it's a big finish with that Netherlands-France one, so hopefully it's just as enjoyable as most of the ones have been. And if we could get a little bit more excitement in the 5 p.m. game, that would be lovely today.
Yeah, it would. Right, just for the purpose of mentioning it, Argentina beat Canada 2-0 last night. Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez with second-half goals for Argentina as they begin their attempt to become only the second team to go continental champions, world champions, continental champions after the great Spanish team of 2008, 2010, 2012. I don't think anyone will put this Argentina team on the same pedestal that we've put that Spanish team, but it would be an incredible achievement if they were to win 3 in a row in that manner. So we'll be back tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.